Good morning. I've been asked to read, or I'm reading a bit from Meister Eckhart, which many of you will have heard of. And he lived in the 14th century and died in 1329. He is really at the zenith of the medieval period. Some people think he might be an early person for the Reformation or the Renaissance, but actually he is at the zenith of the medieval period. And from the point of view of the monasteries and contemplation, this is reading comes from his works. The whole of Europe changed in 1348 at the time of the Black Death. So Meister Eckhart died before the Black Death and before that calamity struck Europe. And so he's firmly entrenched in the medieval period. And this is the reading, and it's on a chapter called On Detachment. I have read many works of both heathen masters and prophets and books of the Old and New Testament, and have sought earnestly and with the utmost diligence to find out what is the best and highest virtue, with the aid of which man could be more closely united with God, by which man could become by grace what God is by nature, and by which man could be most like the image of what he was when he was in God, when there was no difference between him and God, before God had created the world. And when I search the scriptures thoroughly, as far as my reason can fathom and know, I just find that pure detachment stands above all things. For all virtues pay some regard to the creatures, yet detachment is free from all creatures. Hence it was that our Lord said to Martha, "One thing is needful, that is to say, he who wishes to be untroubled and pure must have one thing, namely detachment." The teachers praise love most highly, as St. Paul does when he says, "In whatever tribulation I may find myself, if I have not love, I am nothing." But I praise detachment more than all love. First, because the best thing about love is that forces me to love God. On the other hand, detachment from God to love me. Now, it is much nobler that I should force God myself than I should force myself to God. And the reason is that God can join himself to me more closely and unite himself with me better than I could unite myself with God. That detachment forces God to me, I can prove by the fact that everything likes to be in its own natural place. Now, God's own and natural place is unity and purity, and they come from detachment. Hence, God must of necessity give himself to a detached heart. Now, there is a further passage which I'm going to read, and that it comes a little later in the same section of the work. And it starts off, "Now you might ask, what is detachment? Since it is so noble in itself. Here you should know that true detachment is nothing other than this. The spirit stands as immovable in all. The assaults of joy or sorrow, honor, disgrace, or shame, as a mountain of lead, stands immovable against a small wind. This immovable detachment brings about in man the greatest similarity with God. For if God is God, He has it from his immovable detachment, and from this detachment, he has his purity, his simplicity, and his immutability. And therefore, if man is to become like God, as far as a creature can possess similarity with God, it must be by means of detachment. It is this that leads man to purity, and from purity to simplicity, and from simplicity to immutability. And these things bring about a certain similarity between God and man. For this similarity must take place through grace. For grace draws men away from all temporal things and purifies him from all transient things. That's the end of the reading.